Hi, I'm Matt Royce, and this is episode 11 of 3 Minute Tech. Now, these are the episodes where we cover off on your strategic financial planning questions in simple, easy to understand language without any of that technical jargon. Now, today we'll be covering off and beginning our first of a 3-part series on estate planning. Today specifically, we'll be talking about wills and testamentary trusts. So what is a will? In simple terms, a will is a legal document that provides your instructions as to what happens with your asset position on your death. So when looking at wills, what are some of the important terms? Often people talk about an executor or an executrix. Who are they? Well, simply put, they are the people in charge with administering your estate. You're giving them directions as to where you want your assets distributed on death. What about a legal personal representative? Well, that's just another name for an executor or an executrix. And lastly, what is the grant of probate? Well, this is, simply put, the certificate that the court gives you to say that the will that you're administering is valid. So let's firstly start off with what isn't covered by a will. Well, joint assets, not owned in tenants in common. That isn't covered by a will because if you die, it simply goes to the survivor. Things or assets in companies, unit trusts or discretionary trusts are also not covered because they're a separate legal entity. And benefits arising from life insurance or superannuation are also not automatically covered within your will because they have specific beneficiary nominations. So what is covered by a will then? Well, effectively anything else. We're talking about personal effects, personal cash accounts, investment, bonds, property, and intangible property such as intellectual property. So everything in your personal name will be covered by your will, and therefore it's important to have it current, up-to-date, and valid. So when should you review your will or put a will into place? Well, importantly, if you have any material changes to your financial position, you should update your will. We're talking about if you have children, if you get married, if you get divorced, or if you have any changes in your asset position. Now, importantly, in WA, a marriage or divorce revokes your will, and therefore it's important that if you have a will and have went through those major lifestyle changes, that you get your will updated immediately. So what happens if you die without a will? In the eyes of the law, you're deemed to die intestate. So what does that mean? It just means that your asset position is distributed in accordance with a government formula. Now you can see on screen, this formula is complex, and it may mean that your assets are being distributed to people who you do not want to receive them. So it's important to have a valid, current and up-to-date will at all times. Well, you may have heard when people are talking about wills, they also talk about a testamentary trust. Now what is it? Well, it's simply a trust that only comes into effect on your death. People use it because it has significant tax planning and asset protection benefits. The tax planning means that you can have multiple generations receiving benefits, such as minor children or grandchildren. And these grandchildren are actually taxed at adult marginal rates, which provides a significant tax benefit. The asset protection benefits come from the fact that it's a separate legal entity. So if you have a beneficiary that's going through a marriage breakdown or a business failure, having assets go via a testamentary trust can be significantly important in terms of protecting the overall asset pool. So in our case study, we have Esther. Esther, unfortunately, is a widower and has $1 million in cash in the bank. She only has one child and his name is Elliot. Now, Elliot in his own right is extremely successful. He has 3 children, he has a successful business, he's paid off his mortgage, and he's taxed at the top marginal rate. Now, Esther passes away and doesn't have a testamentary trust, which means this $1 million goes to Elliot, Elliot invests it, and he has to pay tax at 47%. Now, if Esther had a testamentary trust and included the 3 grandchildren within this trust, effectively Elliot could distribute the investment earnings to each of the 3 grandchildren and pay no tax whatsoever. On an annual basis, this is saving close to $25,000 in tax, and therefore the planning is important. So what have we learned in episode 11 of 3 Minute Tech? where we've learnt the importance of having a current, valid and up-to-date will. Now there's only two certainties in life, death and taxes, and by planning for the former, we're able to protect the latter, so it's important to consider this now.